The darts aren't enough, though, and even when Owen gets in on this, Fox still manages to overwhelm and escape the room, getting past Xanatos mooks because that's what mooks are for. Stay down, guys. It's going to be easier that way. Fortunately, built into Plan A are the seeds of Plan B. Owen's dart included a tracking device, whose sensors show that she might just burn out by morning, considering the metabolic demands that this makes. Xanatos heads out in his exosuit to try to deal with her. She's eating constantly now, which is a problem because she's never going to fit in that wedding dress at this rate. She makes short work of him, though, and has him at her mercy, but there's enough of Fox still in there to stop her from biting his head off. I mean, they're getting married. They'll have plenty of time for that later, believe me. During all of this, Elisa has informed Goliath of what happened to her, and the two have been looking for a lead on the werewolf, so they drop in just as she's making her escape. Goliath and her throw down for a while until he manages to get her down for the count, but then Xanatos shows up and tries to remove the Eye of Odin. Instead of pulling it off and presumably returning her to normal, he gets zapped and Fox gets back up for round 2. Now, assuming that the werewolf is some poor schmuck that Xanatos put in this predicament, Goliath tries to convince her that they're also enemies of Xanatos and can help her. But since he's no longer trying to stop a wild beast but to reason with her, she overwhelms Goliath and escapes. Again, she's almost as good at that as pulling trench coats out of the ether. Xanatos flies off while Elisa says that they need to get everyone together to try and track down the werewolf and remove the eye. But Goliath has started to catch on to how Xanatos operates. So even as Xanatos speaks of Plan C to Owen, that the Gargoyles will try to thwart his scheme, which is exactly what he wants them to do, Goliath shows up.
I don't suppose you have a Plan D.
D as in dope. So Xanatos shows how desperate he is now. He tells the truth. The werewolf is Fox. The Eye of Odin was supposed to grant power and insight, but it seems turning into a flesh-eating monster is an unlisted bug. But despite his attempts to convince Goliath, Elisa isn't buying into it, and Goliath seems to agree, so they take off. We'll let the flesh-eating werewolf run loose throughout the city. That'll show you, Xanatos. Instead, they join the street Halloween party going on, where the others are already enjoying themselves, since everyone assumes that they're wearing costumes. I mean, besides the costumes that they're wearing. Flying Ace, Pirate, and Trench Coat. I found a whole dumpster full of them in an alley next to the meat locker. Elisa and Goliath go as Beauty and the Beast. This is Disney, of course. They won't sue themselves. Probably. But after some dancing in the street and a run-in with a guy in a werewolf costume, Goliath is starting to reconsider, and right in time for Xanatos to show up. He has enough sense not to gloat that Goliath would come around to his way of thinking. He's already done enough to piss off the 1,000-year-old flying Hulk, no need to add to it. The party's interrupted by Fox's arrival, and she's not going down so easy this time, tossing Goliath into poor Brendan's car, and leaving Fox free to come out into the open, right into the food carrot. Oh man, just looking at that makes me hungry for some Cinnanob. She makes a break for it up the side of the building, Goliath in close pursuit, and Xanatos and Elisa catch up eventually, in front of everybody, although they might think it's just his Halloween costume and not really some super futuristic exosuit. But probably not. He was arrested after all and has no doubt been tried in the corrut of public opinion. When they arrive, Fox seems to confuse Elisa with herself and thus tries to attack her. It makes sense if you're a werewolf. But Goliath steps in and drives her into the sign. That's an homage to Highlander, another work with an immortal Scotsman. Xanatos finally rips the eye free and Fox returns back to normal, but Goliath plans to keep the eye, which Xanatos is willing to give up. But all in all, everything has seemed to have worked out for everybody.
So now you know my weakness. Only you would regard love as a weakness.
I'm giving Eye of the Beholder a stamp of recommended. It's a well-paced, well-presented story. Despite being a Halloween tale, it's more of a love story, actually. But Halloween is a fitting setting because, as I alluded to earlier, the theme of the episode is tied into masks. See, the Eye of Odin provides insight into your character. In other words, it removes what we use to cover us from the eyes of the world and reveals what we are. The mask is stripped away. In Fox's case, there was a beast lying within, one who feared power and yet reveled in it. For Xanatos, it was the fact that he loved her because, as he saw it, love is a weakness. Even with Owen, Xanatos painted his regret over what happened with Fox as being the loss of something of such great power. But when he turned his back, his expression revealed that it was the fear of what he'd unwittingly done. Because the masks are off, Goliath sees through Xanatos' attempt at manipulation and refuses to be maneuvered into helping him. He only does so later on his terms and for his reasons. Elisa dances with Goliath in public and says that it's a chance to now show how she really feels about him. And even the secondary plot with the block party showed the Gargoyles being able to go amongst the people that they protect without disguises, yet still be embraced as one of their own. For one night, they didn't need to wear the mask. They could be themselves. And of course, setting it during Halloween makes all of this ironic, that on the day that everyone else puts masks on, that's the day that everyone we know finally has theirs removed, whether they want the world to see their true face or not. With, of course, one exception. The one and only person who doesn't is the one whose face, mask intact, is seen as the episode fades to black.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
It just doesn't get any better than this.